Jerry, Ryan, it's great to have you here.
Good morning. Good to see you, Mark.
Cheers.
To jump right in, can you talk a little bit about Revasum, the markets, the end markets especially that you're addressing?
Yeah, good question. The way to think about Revasum is this. There are a lot of end markets. In this case, we're spending the vast majority of our time, our customers are spending time in the electrification of vehicles. So you have car companies, Tesla, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, that have development efforts in electrification of cars, hybrid, all electric, and they require very special semiconductor computing chips, devices, and those are made in different factories around the world by a number of different companies, and those are our customers. So what our company does in very simple terms is we make machines for the companies that make the computing chips that end up in cars.
Right. And why do they need your machine specifically?
Well, when we move to the electrification of cars, it's essentially a big battery on wheels. That's what an electric car is. And how that battery operates becomes very critical. The range, the power density, and what they're finding is by using some special materials, in this case it's something called silicon carbide, it controls the leakage of the battery. When you press the accelerator, the inverter turns on, the battery drains, you get power. But when it's off, they need it off, 100% off. And these new computing devices made out of this material called silicon carbide are required. And we have an expertise. We've been doing this for more than 10 years. And I'll use a prop here, a semiconductor wafer. And our machines will do things like grind it. It will give it a perfect thickness. Everyone knows automation needs perfect things going through it the same size, so we can make it perfectly flat. And then it also, in order to print, you can see this has devices on it, you have to polish it to a mirror finish. So in simple terms, we make a machine that grinds the wafer, gives it its exact shape, and then we polish it to give it a perfect flatness and smoothness so they can print the devices.
Right. And what's so difficult about silicon carbide processing that? I guess that's really the essence, right?
That is the essence. In silicon carbide, every device in the world is made on a material called silicon. It's one of the most abundant materials, and it's very easy to work. Silicon carbide has silicon atoms, it has carbon atoms, and the only thing harder than silicon carbide is diamond. So it's a particularly difficult material. It's an expensive material to produce, and what we're doing, the machines that we're making, we spend most of our effort trying to get the machine to operate as optimally as possible and reduce the ongoing running costs. That's the most important thing for our customers. What does it cost to produce every one of these devices? Our machines help them make them more efficiently and make them with a higher yield going through the manufacturing process. Because largely all these processes are very manually intensive. We provide only automated machines, which obviously take humans out of the equation and everything runs a little more smoothly.
Yeah, okay. So it's fair to say that investment in silicon carbide capacity is relatively, I wouldn't say new, but it's sort of at the cusp of big growth. If you look at plans from some of the industry players. If you look at the traditional semiconductor cycle, which is cyclical in nature, could you say that your growth path potentially could be sort of secular from that?
Oh, I think that's exactly true. As you said, the semiconductor industry goes up and down. In this case, there's not nearly enough capacity to produce enough devices for the car companies. Right now, there's one car in volume production using silicon carbide. It's the Tesla Model 3. Mm-hmm. Every car company over the next 5 years, you'll see 50 to 60% of the passenger vehicles in the world will be electrified. We are in the first inning of this game. It's a very new capacity. So I think we are outside the norm of the industry. Regardless of the macroeconomic cycles that are happening, companies are investing and, in fact, accelerating activity in silicon carbide right now.
Right. So potentially we could see, a couple of years down the line, you might see a drop in the semiconductor cycle itself, but because of the investment in silicon carbide, that might not be impacted as much.
I think one of our hopes, one of our dreams with Revasum is that because we're early in this cycle and we are an early technology producer for these customers, it is going to be a long, slow ramp. This is a very difficult technology to master. We have this expertise over a decade, and the end customers will take 3 or 4 years to really get to volume production.
Right.
So I think we're going to have a good run in front of us without the normal cycles that you would see.
Right. Yeah. I saw yesterday actually Porsche is now out with a fully electrical vehicle.
I'd like to have one of those.
It says turbo on it, but it's not.
No actual turbo.
There's no turbo there, yeah. All right. So with this expected ramp up in the next couple of years, what's your strategy? Are you planning to do everything in-house? Is there another strategy around that, in terms of outsourcing potentially?
Sure. I'm going to let Ryan answer that question.
Maybe I'll interject. Look, I think our core strengths, of course, is our intellectual property, our technology, and our engineering know-how. So as we look to kind of meet this kind of growing demand in this market, we're going to look for best practice in terms of how to scale. So I think you'll see us look to partner with world-class engineering firms, world-class contract manufacturers that can provide us essentially a working capital light model.
Right.
That can also provide us a model where we're able to minimize our overhead and see kind of expanding, leveraging gross margins.
Right, okay. And just one final question.
Sure.
Given the trade war, everything that's happening between the US and China, how does it impact you guys?
That's a really good question. And this is one of those times where Asia in general, China specifically, is quite far behind. They're 2 or 3 years behind the US and European companies. So we see the ramp coming first in the United States and Europe, which
Right.
is unusual for the semiconductor industry.
Yeah.
Usually it's very Asia heavy. China will come. China will invest. They are trying. I don't see it ramping there for 2 or 3 years. So hopefully over the next couple of
Right.
years, things settle down and
Just in
China
time to sort it out.
becomes normal again.
Yeah.
But the good news is right now, it's not as critical as it might normally be.
Right, okay. Exciting stuff, a lot to look forward to. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for your
Appreciate
time.
it.
Cheers.
Thank you.